What's going on, everyone? My name is Burke, and today I will be bringing the Week 4 power rankings for the PIC. Now today, the rankings will not mirror the table. I can start shuffling some people around based on how I think they're doing, and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet, just like last week, but again, I do ramble on a little bit, and if it's not, sorry, listen to me at 2 times, it's kind of funny. So without further ado, let's move on to my number 11. And at number 11, I have the Dallas Darmanitans. This battle, well, for one, Rotom really can't seem to hit hydro pumps when it needs to. Don't really understand why. But this week he was really unprepared for the Cacturn. He even said, I didn't have anything for Cacturn, I expected Whimsicott to show up. Never not prepare for something on your opponent's team. Don't make assumptions based on what you think your opponent will bring. It's not good planning, because what happens is they bring the thing you didn't plan for. Well, as you see in this battle, it just kind of punched holes in his team. He was getting predicted pretty heavily in the early game. He let Meloetta wear down both the Cofagrigus and the P2, two very defensive mons. Once Cofagrigus was down to about 15% and the P2 died, obviously can't do much then. He was making some also pretty questionable plays, switching his Gliscor and a Scald. I get it. I get why he did it, because he was expecting the Earthquake or Earth Power from the Swampert on the Terrakion, but Scald was a safer play. He only had one resist, being the Rotom, and obviously the Gliscor also is immune to the Earthquake, and that's not going to appreciate Scald. It didn't. It took like clean 80% from that, and that really, really hampers what it can do. Granted, it didn't get burned, so at least it wasn't completely ruined, but still, it just did not help him at all. I don't know what Rotom said it was. It looked like to be AV again, but I don't know if you can use Pain Split while also holding an AV. But he never will-o-wisped any of his opponent's threats, namely the Cacturn and the Swampert. He had plenty of chances to do so. He chose not to. If he didn't have Will-O-Wisp and he wasn't AV, I don't really understand that. If he was AV, then, AV did not help him this week. Mostly he didn't have ways to reliably take down Cacturn, and it really showed. Not only Cacturn, but Swampert. That thing stayed on the field, and every time it came onto the field, dealt big damage to his team, and that's not something you want. Swampert's something very easy to plan for. Tack on some HP grasses, because despite how bulky Swampert is, not taking HP grass from a lot of things. So overall, I think he was just really out-prepped this week. His opponent brought things that he was not prepared for, and it really, really showed. So he takes home another loss. I guess the big picture to take from this is make sure you prepare for everything. Do not make assumptions on what your opponents can bring, because that can really bite you in the ass. And this week it did, and hopefully next week he can prepare better for a lot of the threats on his opponent's team, and hopefully pick up a win soon. I never like to see a team go winless, and I really want everyone to do well. So I hope he does. I hope he prepares a little bit better in the future. This was just his team just was not prepared well this week, and it just showed. Moving on to number 10, I have the Chester Chinchous. Now, with Joe, a lot of the things that I think he's doing wrong, it comes from his lack of, I want to say, knowledge of his opponent's team. He doesn't do any calcs during his games, which is not great. You want to do calcs. He said that Seismic Toss wouldn't do much from a Chansey. It doesn't matter what Seismic Toss is from. It's always going to do 100 damage every single time, because it's level 100. And then, why would you switch in Vaporeon and an EQ from the Fortress? Do the calcs. You see what kind of set it is. You would see that it was banded immediately as it goes for the EQ. Because under no circumstances should an EQ from a Fortress deal 52% to a Registeel, unless it's banded max attack out of it. Do the calcs, you can see what your opponent's set is, and then you can make the appropriate switch, because knowing it was banded, he could have switched in a whole host of other things that could take the attacks better, like Dragonite, which is immune. Just as well, don't give up 4 turns into the game. You want to keep your head into the game until the very last turn, until you absolutely know you've lost. Keep your head into the game, because you do not know what your opponent can do. Keep playing, keep trying to make the best plays you can. Maybe your opponent chokes, who knows? But 4 turns in, you don't know who's going to win unless you literally just get swept immediately, but that didn't happen. I will say he did use Malamar very well this week, but he let it go down way too early. Because once that went down, he had virtually nothing to kill Chansey. And Chansey is just a fat wall that can sit on the field, and then what do you do? Nothing, because it's a Chansey. And nope, nothing's going to take that down unless it's strong fighting stab or knockoff. Which, Malamar didn't have the fighting stab, it did have superpower, and it had knockoff. So he needed that for Chansey, and once that went down, at that point, I would say that was the game, because he couldn't take that down. However, Malamar AV set, pretty good. It threw his opponent way off guard. He made him sack off the Venusaur, thinking that it could deal damage to it. It couldn't, not with an HP fighting. I didn't really understand rock sliding the fortress. It's not weak to rocks. Look up the types, look up the type effectiveness, look up what the opponent's mons are weak to. Superpowers would have done more, and you would have gotten the attack and defense boosts. Knockoff Pro probably would have just outright killed and taken away the band, and then effectively dealing less damage. But the rock slide, maybe you could have hoped for a flinch, but the only thing that happened was the fortress stayed alive, and the Malamar went down. And then once Malamar went down, Hazards and Chansey just slowly whittled down his team until he lost. Like, there was literally nothing he could have done. But at least he realized at the end, oh, I should have saved the Malamar, because it's the biggest thing in League format is when you go to planning, you identify what you think could be your win conditions or things you need to keep alive to win. But when you actually get to the battle, then you have to look, okay, what do I actually need to keep alive to win? And Malamar was one of those things he needed to keep alive to blow back that Chansey, and he could not. So overall, I think he needs to start looking at the long game more than just turn to turn, because when you look turn to turn, yeah, maybe you made one good turn or 2 good turns, but what were those turns working towards the end goal of actually winning? Was that the most effective play in the long run? And that's something, it's not easy to do. It's not easy to start thinking long game than short game, but it's something you need to do to be more effective in League format. So overall, I think I want to see him improve, because he needs to start keeping in mind different things like that, but he can improve, and I really hope he does. At number 9, I have the LA Doublades. This battle was weird. Like, I don't know, he didn't hold much momentum, but still got to a 1-0. I was really confused by this match, but for turn one, not starting off on a good foot. He fell right into the trap, turn 1. Thundy could have put in a ton of work, but he went for the Thunderbolt. Mirror Coat with the Wakan Berry allowed Melodic to survive and then just immediately destroy Thundurus. I'm not taking away from him. He obviously did not know it was Wakan Berry with Mirror Coat, but he got no burns throughout this entire battle, really. So that was really unfortunate for him, but it let Tentacruel take really big damage. He used Wish Passing relatively effectively this game. He was able to Wish Pass back into the Tentacruel that had previously taken big damage and get back to a reasonable amount of health. He was doing a little bit of like stall wars with the Melodic, which ultimately ended up not in his favor, because you're hyper voicing with the Sylveon, which is dealing a decent amount of damage to Melodic. You saw the Mirror Coat already. And then Sylveon died to the Mirror Coat. Just as well, for some reason, I didn't really understand it. He never wanted to go for Bolt Strike when the Scarm was in. The 2 switch-ins to Victini were either Melodic or Latias. When they went for Bolt Strike or V-Create on the Latias, it did not matter. You weren't doing much damage anyway. But if you went for the Bolt Strike, you probably could have taken down the Melodic a lot earlier and put on a lot more offensive pressure. But he didn't really ever. Towards the end, he went for Bolt Strikes, but in the middle of the game, he knew the switch-in was Melodic to the V-Create, and he could have gone for Bolt Strikes, but coulda, woulda, shoulda. He still, again, Tentacruel went down the same way that Sylveon, and Thundurus went down, Mirror Coat. He would go for Sludge Wave, Mirror Coat, dead. Towards the end of the game, though, he was able to get that skill para on the Tauros and take that out, almost pulling out the win by tanking an Earthquake from Infernape, but then subsequently dying to the Mach Punch. So probably the biggest things I see, toward the beginning of the game, he was not holding up really any momentum. It was Juan all the way. Juan killed his Thundurus right off the bat, and he's now on the back foot. He did manage to bring it back, killing off the Skarmory and whittling down the Melodic a lot, which did open up the doors for Mega Pinsir to sweep. However, he wasn't really given much of a chance to do so. He was almost able to pull out this win. Granted, the Paras, had he parried the Tauros to win and had the Mach Punch not happen, he could have won, but what are you going to do? I think he played this one well. Like, I know I'm being really critical, but that's just because it's the kind of person I am. I'm pretty critical, and I say more negative things to hope to help, because it's great giving people a pat on the back, but that doesn't really help too much. He did play well. I think he played pretty well. I think he could have, there's plays he could have made differently, trying to save possibly his Tentacruel and his Sylveon, not letting those go down to Miracoat. But the first turn Thundy, no one could have really predicted that, and he just, once from that, he's on the back foot for most of the match. Doesn't really build up too much momentum and just gets gradually worn down to the point where Tauros was going to just take down the last two threats, but unfortunately, Para dies, all that fun stuff. So anyway, moving on to number 8, I have the Meath Mamoswines. This battle, it was Suicune against the world, and Suicune won. I don't know why. Jim, why are you so intent on paralyzing Suicune? It's not that fast. Go for damage. Kill the damn thing. Kill the stuff and the things. Don't let them survive. Because even though, the Suicune can get paralyzed, and you can hope for some para hacks, you could also hope to just outright kill with Thunderbolt. I think that would have been a little bit better. He tried to keep his walls healthy, but unfortunately he let it get whittled down too much, especially Donphan. I like to play rough Donphan to try to help deal damage to Druddigon, but still did pretty pitiful damage to a fully physically defensive Druddigon with Rough Skin and Rocky Helmet. The pairs really did the damage to Jim this game. He had a bunch of them. The Willow Miss was also really unfortunate on the Mega Metagross. That made sure it was still a huge threat to Jim's team, and once the Jellicent went down, then he didn't have too much else to deal with Suicune except for Thundurus. And what you do is you don't, putz around and go for the T-Wave on a Suicune. Kill it with electricity. I would say kill with fire, but you're not killing that thing with fire. You're not really killing that thing with much. But it was only a +1. Go for the Thunderbolt. Just go for the stab. Do not mess with threats in front of you. Don't think he could switch into this. Nope. Kill it. Because what happened was, once he paralyzed it, okay, it was paralyzed, but you haven't done damage to it. You're not any closer to killing it. And with Rocks up, then he's Volt switching around, letting Thundurus take a bunch of damage, and Suicune is just able to sweep him at the end. So sometimes you just gotta hit what's in front of you. Don't mess around with those kind of things. Just hit it hard, hit fast, hit hard. And he was holding up. He was doing pretty good throughout the entire battle, but it was just towards the end, once Suicune was brought in, it put a complete halt to anything he was trying to do, and he had no real effective ways to deal with it. Because I don't even know if Thundurus had Thunderbolt this week. I think it only had Volt Switch and Thunder Wave, so that ain't great. You see Suicune on the opponent's team, and you just try to hit it really damn hard. So anyway, moving on to number 7, I have the Detroit Steel Wings. First turn setup. I said this last week. Why would you first turn setup with a Red Rock? Your opponent has a Bronzong. I like Rock Polish Red Rock. Don't get me wrong. I really like it for the late game when the hard counters have been removed. Bronzong is not just it's a hard counter. You will never going to be doing anything to Bronzong with Red Rock. And he was playing really poorly around the Bronzong. In the beginning, he lets Golbat take huge damage and then die to a Scald, all for a Defog. So once the rocks got set up again, there was no way he was getting rid of them. He tried to make some predictions with Nidoqueen. They didn't pan out, such as he readied the Garchomp switch in after he went for a Thunderbolt. Raikou came in instead, so Ice Beam did pretty meager damage. And he didn't really include any Garchomp switches on his team this week. The only thing that stopped an outrage was, Mega Gardevoir, but that didn't take an EQ. And Southsped, and Garchomp outspeeds it, so that's not really good. And he not only did he not have Garchomp switch-ins, he didn't really have many great ways of dealing with Bronzong. Like Wino Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat deals pretty effectively with Bronzong. Could have dealt a lot of damage because it's either gonna be Levitate or Heat Proof. And seeing as it was most likely gonna be Levitate anyway, Rotom would have dealt a good chunk of damage to it. The one thing he did have was Sharpedo, which he stayed in on Alomola a lot. He let it die to Rocky Helmet Alomola for nothing. Alomola stayed nice and healthy and Sharpedo just died. So I think he still has the problems with, he doesn't seem to recognize what he needs to win the game. He was not saving things for the late game. He, again, is playing one turn at a time, not looking towards the long game, because saving Sharpedo would have been fantastic, because once the Alomola goes down, Sharpedo could have put in a lot of work killing the Bronzong, killing Raikou, because that thing was AV. It was kind of defensive, but it took a good chunk of damage in the beginning. You could have killed that. You saw that the crunches weren't doing anything to the Alomola, but he still stayed in, took Rocky Helmet and Life Orb damage every turn, and all it had to do was just wish, protect, wish, protect. It's the same thing for a lot of coaches, and again, it's a hard thing to do, but you have to make sure to save things for the late game and recognize what are my win conditions when I see team matchup. You'll make a conception in team planning, what are my win conditions going into this battle, and then you look at the actual team matchup and you say, all right, I have to reevaluate what are my actual win conditions. What can I use to win this game? And I think Sharpedo could have been one had he taken out the Alomola. I'm saying this for him. It's not just him. There's quite a few coaches, even myself. It's not an easy thing to do when you're battling, to look at team preview and say, what do I need to make sure that I can win? It's enough rambling on that. So moving on to number 6, I have the Carolina Castforms. I think he played a pretty good game this week. He was really able to whittle down Jim's team with Rocks, Kecleon, and Druddigon. Not something you really see. And he knew his win con was Suicune, and he saved it. He was like, I'm saving Suicune for the end when he can't really damage it. He still has no Thunder Punch on Metagross. I don't get it. Why? Your opponent has quite a few things weak to Electric. Bring Thunder Punch. That your opponent has a Jellicent. Bring Thunder Punch on Metagross, because then Jellicent is not a switch-in because you can kill with Thunder Punch. He wanted to keep Rocks up this game, and I think it was great spin blocking with Kecleon. I don't really know why he didn't go for double Shadow Sneak. Could have killed off the Donphan and then had a Kecleon still for a little while. I don't know, to go for another Shadow Sneak. That's not a really big thing, but I think the way he used Kecleon this game was fantastic. I always love seeing Kecleon do a lot of work. It's my second favorite Pokemon. And he did a good amount of shuffling of Jim's team to get chip damage off on things. It was a little bit risky, seeing as Jim still had a Florges that could switch in on a Dragon Tail, but still, good job on that. And I didn't really understand sacking off Weavile. It could have hurt a lot of things on Jim's team, even the Florges with the Poison Jab, and Thunderous definitely, because you outspeed, and it could have done a lot of things, but I understand he sacked it off to get a safe switch in to Suicune and win. So I can't really fault him on that, because Suicune comes in, does Suicune things, and wins. He knew to keep Suicune healthy for the sweep, able to set up just a crap ton of Calm Minds and sweep, which is great. That's what you want to see. Know what your win conditions are. Know that, my opponent does not have tons of things to deal with Suicune. He's got a Thunderous, but if I can set up 1 or 2 Calm Minds, Thunderous is a lot less of a threat. He did that, able to set those Calm Minds, keep setting them up, and just win the game. Really good game on Trav's part. So moving on. So at number 5, I have the Denver Blitzels. The reason I didn't move him up too much, the reason I didn't move him up so much is because a lot of the things in this battle, I didn't really understand why it caught him off guard so much, but Banded Fori. I love Banded Fori. It is one of my favorite fortress sets for no particular reason. It's just stupid, and I like it. And it worked. It worked really well, and awesome. I didn't really understand the Super Fang on the Nidoking. It was interesting. Didn't really do anything, but still interesting. I don't know if it would take Life Orb damage from Super Fang, but it was a good set, don't get me wrong. Banded EQ just over half to a Registeel and then just destroyed Vaporeon's life. Granted, it was a crit, but still a crit EQ doing 80%. That means a regular EQ doing about like 55%. That's crazy to a Vaporeon. Chansey walled the Ever-Living Hell out of PZ. I hate you, Chansey. You are stupid and you shouldn't exist. The one thing is, and this is why he's like moved a little bit lower, he played really poorly around the Malamar. He let his mons take a bunch of damage. Like, why would you go into your Mega Venusaur and HP fighting? It's not weak to HP fighting. I understand going into Venusaur and getting off more damage, but HP fighting was not the way to do that. Like, you could have lost not only Mega Venusaur, but if Joe had actually gone for something like Knockoff or Superpower on the Fortress, you would have been a lot worse place, because then not only would it be still decently healthy, you would not be able to reliably take it down well with your team, but, you know, misplays on your opponent side, take advantage of them, and that works. Once the Malamar went down, though, that was it. That was a game, because Chansey is Chansey, and it's stupid, and I hate it. I don't know why it exists. It shouldn't. I hate Chansey. But Chansey just literally sat on the field, and PZ, Psyshock did 30%, and Dragonite's not going to do too much. Granted, he could have outraged, but then, you know, and then once Dragonite went down, then he literally had no worries about anything, because now Porygon Z, Galvantula can't do anything to Chansey. So overall, it was a relatively straightforward win. He's got to make sure to play that mid game a little bit better. Do not get frazzled by things like Malamar. Yes, Malamar can be a threat, but I think he let it be too much of a threat by making poor switches around it. At number 4, I have the Kutztown Krookodiles. I didn't really understand his playing this week, because I felt like he could have won really quickly. First, I really like the Rocky Helmet Swampert this week instead of Mega. That was really cool. I like the diversity in which she's using sets, and Rocky Helmet Swampert just did the work this week. Cacturne just shut down so much of his opponent's team. His opponent, again, didn't prepare for Cacturne, and when you bring something your opponent doesn't prepare for, it's going to do work. What I meant by I don't really understand his playing, I didn't really understand the switch out with Cacturne from the Cofagrigus. You had speed. You even said, I know he's going for Will-O-Wisp. I know he's going for Will-O-Wisp. Sub up, SD up, and just kill the things. Kill all the things, because you could have easily set up the +6 on that thing. I don't think it had Shadow Ball, Will-O-Wisp, Pain Split, and like something else. You could have actually set up on that thing crazy amounts. And then once you set up to like +6, you just sucker punch everything and just pretty much win the game. You could have had a sub up, then a whole lot of crap. So that probably would have made this match so much shorter. I did like the offensive Hitmontop. It worked well this week. Teching on Toxic was good to whittle down the Cofagrigus. You toxiced it. I liked how he used Meloetta this week. Put a lot of pressure on the Wall Core, Porygon 2, and Cofagrigus. It took out the Porygon 2 and it whittled down the Cofagrigus down to about 10%. Going for Sucker Punch against the Terrakion was really risky. Granted, he did have Technician Mach Punch sitting in the back, but how do you get caught off guard by Justified Terrakion? It has to be Justified. It's the only ability it has. So look, like this is part of preparing. Look up the abilities. And not only that, you can actually see the abilities if you just hover over the Pokemon as it's out. You check the abilities, you see, oh, it's Justified. Make sure you check those things before you battle and while you're battling to make sure that you don't get caught off guard by something very obvious as Justified. I do like, though, that he is doing calc. He's using calcs to make sure he can see what hits he can live, what hits he can take, all those things, and I like that. I like when people do calcs because it helps them play more efficiently during battle. Overall, though, he just kept up the better offensive momentum, took advantage of misplays by his opponent, and just kind of just blew his opponent back with Swampert and Cacturn. Two things that you don't normally say. Those are my win conditions, and that's what I'm going to use to win. And he used those things to win, and it was a very good battle. So at number 3, I had the Bury. Someone's got to correct me with this. Bury or Bury? You'll let me know, because I still can't pronounce it. But anyway, we've got them at number 3. They didn't play this week, so just gonna skip on over them. At number 2, I have the Cape Arboks. This was an extremely straightforward battle for him. He had the switch-ins to everything that Crimson had, and just all that kind of stuff. He brought the Chat Tot. Didn't use it, but hey, it was there. I liked it. Choice Specs Boomburst would have just kind of blown holes in things, and you don't really see Chat Tot use it often. He played really well around the setup on Crimson's team, although he did let Raikou take pretty good damage from the Earthquake, which I don't really see why he switched in Raikou. I guess maybe he was predicting a switch out of his own, but you could have easily just switched in the Bronzong immediately and then just neutralized the threat that was Regirock. He actually used Regirock to set up hazards and then deal huge damage to Golbat, easily being able to take it down with an Alamo later. He had switch-ins to all of Crimson's offense and used that to gradually wear down his team, where things like Crobat could help clean up at the end. And he's just able to really switch around the offenses. Sharpedo, he had Alomomola. Gardevoir, he had combinations of like Bronzong and AV Raikou, you know, things that can take hits. AV Raikou can't really take a Hyper Voice well, but it can take it okay. And he read the predictions that Crimson was trying to make. Not switching Garchomp in the Ice Beam was really nice. And I think Bronzong was definitely his MVP. Just shut down so much of Crimson's offense, shut down a lot of the setup. And I really like how he's using it. I think it's a very underrated Mon in League format, and you could really see he knows how to use it, and he was using it very well this week. So, really good game. Really, I don't have much to say because I felt like it was just pretty straightforward for him. He switched into the offense, the things that he needed to, and made some pretty good predictions, especially around the Golbat, and was able to take home a pretty big 4-0 win. And at number 1, I have the Amityville Haunters. I thought this was fantastic, playing by Juan this week. A little unlucky, but he still managed to pull through. Wakan Berry, Miracoat, Melodic, amazing set. Destroyed Thundy first turn. Like this is something that I think he does very well, and he knows how to bait in Mons. All right, what would normally be the Melodic switch in? It would be Thundurus to kill it. Slap on the Wakan Berry, slap on the Miracoat, take it down first turn. That was really great. He killed 2 other Mons with it too, Sylveon and Tentacool. So I think he knows how to use Melodic very well, which is great. Melodic's a very good Mon in League format. Considered the best bulky water, I don't know about that, but definitely a great Mon. He played smart. He sacked off Mons that he didn't need anymore to get free switches into counters like Aromatisse. However, I will say that he did sack off the Skarm to a V-Create, and I didn't understand that. Why would you sack off Skarmory when your opponent still has a Mega Pinsir and a Mamoswine? That's very risky. Granted, he still had offense to outspeed both of those in Tauros and Latias, but still just that's really risky. You don't want to mess around with those. You want to make sure to keep the Skarmory alive and well for those two just horribly monstrous offensive threats. So it was a little bit risky, but he kept the battle in his favor. He was able to take down the Mamoswine and able to force a switch into Mega Pinsir to take that down with the Tauros, and was almost able to clean up the Victini with it, but para, and then full para, and then die. Ape was able to finish off with a Mach Punch after an Earthquake, so that was really good on him for teching on the Mach Punch just to make sure that he could pick off things at low health, like the Victini, and that secured him the victory. It was a very close game. I think it would not have been nearly as close had Tauros not just been hacks the hell out, but it's Pokemon, and it happens, so what are you going to do? that is going to be it for the power rankings for week 4 of the PIC. I hope you all enjoyed. I'm really enjoying doing these, and I'm looking forward to the upcoming weeks. I'm really enjoying a lot of the diversity in the sets due to items not being allowed to be shared between mods. It makes for a lot of diverse sets. Like last week I was seeing Spec Slowking, and then I'm saying the same person, but Banded Fory. I love Banded Fory. And it's things like that it's really fun to watch. So that's all I got for today. My name is Burke. I'll see y'all next time.